8 spine-chilling road trip horror stories. Discover the sinister shortcuts you shouldn't take. The summer of 2023 in Ohio was supposed to be a time of family bonding for the Johnsons. Instead, it spiraled into a nightmare. Gas prices were crippling, and their almost defunct SUV sputtered like an old man gasping for breath. "Maybe we should turn back," Sarah whispered, biting her lip. But Jake and Mia giggled, dreaming of adventures in the Appalachian mountains. They pushed on, hoping the trip to see distant relatives wouldn't break them entirely. At a gas station, the owner, a man with a grin wider than the Ohio River, waved them down like an excited puppy. "You're headed to the mountains, huh? Try this shortcut. Old Forest Road saves you hours." His voice dripped with charm, but something in his eyes sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. With a shrug, they took the detour, leaving the well-lit highway behind. As they plunged deeper into the woods, the SUV rattled, swallowed by towering trees, their gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers against the evening sky. Mia gasped, pointing at strange carvings on the bark, a warning or a welcome. "Shouldn't he be here?" A chill crept in. The joyous chatter of the kids faded, awareness prickling at their backs. Silence consumed them, only the rustle of leaves and the soft creaking of their eternal surroundings echoing their unvoiced fear. Then, out of nowhere, they spotted flickering lights in the distance. "Look! Let us check it out!" Mia exclaimed, her voice filled with the thrill of discovery. But as they approached, the roadside diner before them looked like something straight out of a horror film, caught between time and terror, neon flickers buzzing in ominous plea. The locals welcomed them with two wide smiles. Their eyes veiled secrets that sent alarms ringing in Sarah's head. Inside, a bone-deep silence pressed down. Locals whispered in clipped tones about disappearances. The word family of the woods floated ominously, snatching the rapt attention of Mia, whose young imagination filled the gaps. "What are they talking about?" Jake's brow furrowed, his curiosity turning sour. A wave of dread swept over Sarah like ice water as she ordered pancakes, noticing one rough man's predatory gaze drawn to their battered SUV. Something wasn't right. As pace settled in the hushed air, they all felt it, the staring eyes, sharp and sharpener, filling the windows, judging, calculating, watching. Tension clenched Jake's jaw, his heartbeat echoing in a snare drum chaos. With their meal finished, an unnatural chill slithered down the father's spine when he caught sight of a scrawny local scribbling something. Was it a note, a message for the woods? "We should go," he urged, glancing back to see their vehicle surrounded by ghostly figures. But as they stepped outside, panic slammed into them. Flat tires hissed ominously in the dimming light. Did they even have the sense to leave, or were they already in too deep? What lengths would they go to escape? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue across the road. Shadows shifted, threatening to swallow them whole. They scrambled into the SUV, but the landscape felt wrong, alive, twisting into unnerving paths that drew them deeper, away from the escape they desperately sought. Were they trapped in a sinister game, spiraling into the unknown? With the road narrowing beneath them, an icy meaning settled in. The locals were not the only ones watching. In the darkness loomed something darker, hunting for them, thirsty for souls. They were becoming whispers as night fell. Would they find their way back before they, too, vanished into legend? The air thickened as the Johnsons sat frozen in their SUV, flanked by the dim glow of fading headlights. A shiver trailed down Sarah's spine, her breath shallow. The laugh of a child shattered the oppressive silence, but Mia's voice was edged with confusion. "Why are they just standing there?" she murmured, eyes darting to the shadows beyond the diner. Jake's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know," he replied, his voice tense. "But I don't like it. We need to get out of here." They were surrounded, slowly becoming part of the gloom. The flat tires tethered them to this nightmarish scene. Suddenly, the driver's side door opened with a creak that echoed like a haunting siren. A figure leaned in, eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. "You folks lost?" The voice slithered into their ears, thick with an unsettling drawl. We're fine," Jake stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. His gaze flicked over to the gathering crowd, faces warped with malice, watching expectantly like vultures circling a carcass. "Just a misunderstanding, then," the man chuckled, revealing jagged teeth that glimmered under the diner's flickering neon lights. "Why all shouldn't he be driving these parts at night? Things ain't what they seem." His smile broadened, but Jake saw the threat in that grin. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. "Let us go," she urged, but the words barely left her mouth before a shadow loomed behind the stranger, another local, large and menacing, brandishing a crowbar in one meaty hand. In a burst of adrenaline, Jake slammed the door shut. He started the engine, the old machine roaring to life with a wheeze. The headlights illuminated the growing crowd, their faces twisted, eyes glistening with malevolent joy. "Hold on!" Jake shouted, throwing the SUV into reverse, tires screeching against the gravel. But as he shifted into drive, headlights cutting through the encroaching darkness, the shadows seemed to shift like smoke, blocking their path. The woods felt alive, breathing, almost alive. No longer just spectators, the shadows began to draw closer, pulsing with a sinister life of their own. "Jake, watch out!" Mia screamed as a figure darted across the road, a wild-eyed woman with tangled hair and leaves clinging to her tattered clothes. She raised her arms, swaying as if dancing in macabre rhythm, eyes glazed over. Was she part of the family of the woods? Swerving, Jake narrowly avoided her, heart pounding as fear painted their insides. "God, what is happening?" he gasped, giving the wheel a harsh turn in desperation as the trees loomed ever closer, branches like grasping fingers. As they sped away from the diner, the whispers grew behind them, a chilling chant growing in volume. Join us," echoed in the air, a haunting lullaby that seeped into their bones. Each repetition was sharp, echoing with the promise of doom. "Where do we go? None of these roads look safe," Sarah cried, desperation clawing at her voice. Jake glanced into the rearview mirror. Darkness surged like a solid wall. Bones rattled beneath the SUV like an omen, and shadows flickered just out of reach. Just when they thought they might find respite, the headlights hit something unnatural. A trap stretched across the road, branches woven thick like a grotesque net. A frenzied instinct kicked in. Without thinking, Jake veered off the road into muddy depths where the tires sunk, and for a moment they were still. But the screams continued echoing, growing, enveloping everything. Sarah turned to her family, eyes wide with terror. "What do we do now?" Before anyone could respond, the ground shook beneath them, vibrating with an ominous heartbeat. The forest held its breath, and the air grew thick with an ancient promise before the trees closed in. "Hold on!" Jake shouted, but could they break free, or would they, too, be swallowed by the whispers of the wild? Shadows danced around them, and as the SUV trembled in the grip of the unknown, a lone figure stepped into view. A child, her face pale, eyes large and empty, holding a red balloon that bobbed like an unholy specter. "They want you to stay." In that moment, the night seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their next move. Would they escape this woods alive, or would they join the haunting chorus? The SUV shuddered as the weight of silence pressed down on them, wrapping around their hearts like a vice. Sarah's breath came in short gasps, cold sweat trickling down her back. The child with the red balloon stood motionless outside, an eerie silhouette against the flickering glow of dying headlights, her wide eyes glinting with innocence and malice. "Just drive, Jake!" Mia screamed, her voice breaking as she twisted in her seat, hands digging into the fake leather of the upholstery. The oppressive darkness swallowed their words, turning them to whispers, lost in the buzz of the night. Jake's fingers trembled on the gear stick. A battle raged inside him. He couldn't leave the girl behind, could he? Yet they were trapped, surrounded by shadows that slithered ever closer. Maybe she can help us," he said, even though every instinct screamed against it. Their gaze met the childless again, her mouth curling into a smile that felt wrong, twisted like the branches creaking above. "You want to play?" she asked softly, a question wrapped in velvet but with a sharp edge. "Staying is not safe," Sarah pleaded, eyes darting from the child to the encroaching darkness. "She is a trap, Jake. We need to go." But before he could decisively act, the ground beneath them heaved, mud and gravel shifted as if the earth itself wanted to swallow them whole. The SUV lurched, tires slipping in mud. "Hold on!" Jake gritted through clenched teeth, slamming the accelerator. The engine roared, sending a shout into the stillness. But the shadows surged, thick and hungry. Figures materialized from the trees, faces grim and grinning, their laughter climbing like wildfire through the night until it echoed in every corner of the SUV. They were closing in, a wall of chaos surrounding them, the encounter morphing into a symphony of horror. Jake fought against panic, his heart racing. "We have to push through," he cried, and with a jolt he spun the wheel. As they barreled forward, the child stepped closer, her balloon bobbing defiantly. "Join us," she whispered, her voice sweet like honey but thick with a treacherous undercurrent. It was an invitation and a trap, both at once. "Don't listen!" Sarah shrieked, a wave of dread washing over her. "She is not real. None of this is real." But it was too late. The child raised her small hand, pointing at the trees, and suddenly the very woods came alive, branches stretching like arms, swaying in a sinister rhythm, beckoning them to stop. The air thickened with anticipation, their fate teetering on the edge of darkness. "Mia, look out!" Jake shouted as the roof of the SUV scraped against a low-hanging branch. He swerved, nearly losing control. Tires spun. The world outside turned into a blur of shadow and silence that screamed of death. "Something's coming," Mia whispered, eyes wide. The forest echoed with a guttural growl, rumbling from deep within the shadows. Jake's breath hitched as he glanced to the side. A face appeared in the trees, grotesque, twisted, eyes burning with intensity. "Join us, become one of us," it taunted, voice dripping with malice. "Floor it!" Sarah yelled, adrenaline surging through her veins, but the vehicle steered toward the unknown. As they escaped the grasp of the trees, something broke in the air, a snap, like 1,000 bones shattering, and then, a burst of light. A figure, a woman? A ghost? Spun into view for just a heartbeat, pleading for help through silent cries. "Stop!" she mouthed, but the moment was gone as quickly as it came. "Did you see that?" Jake gasped, shaken. "What was that?" "I don't know," Sarah cried, wild-eyed, panic swirling around them like a storm. "Get us out of here!" But the woods conspired against them. An explosion of laughter erupted from behind, filling the air with a sickening glee as more shadows joined the hunt. The road ahead twisted into an unrecognizable frenzy of winding paths and shifting directions, each one leading further into the nightmare. "What if we don't make it?" Mia whispered, the fear saturating her voice. Jake's vision darted between the darkened road and the rearview mirror, dread clawing at his throat. "We have to try, we can't let them take us." And just then, a realization struck like lightning. In the echoes of laughter, there was something deeper, something sinister lurking behind their every move. Were they already too late? Had they already joined the haunting chorus? The shadows were not just chasing them, they were pulling them in, weaving tales of horror that stretched out beyond their grasp. "We need to find a way out," he shouted, desperation pouring from his voice. But as the forest tightened around them, carving their escape into a labyrinth of despair, the haunting aura of the child and her balloon flickered in and out of focus, lingering in the air like a terrible omen. Would the Johnsons break free or become another ghost wandering the dark woods? The question throbbed in the pit of Jake's stomach as he forced the engine to roar, praying for daylight, or a way home before it was too late. Heart pounding, Jake pressed down harder on the gas. The SUV lurched forward, tires screaming against the slick road, but the shadows kept pace, seeming to feed off his panic, closing in with a bubbling malevolence. Out of the corner of his eye, Jake glimpsed the child with the red balloon, her form shimmering like heat haze against the chill of the night air. It was a mirage, a specter meant to seduce them back into the embrace of darkness. "Jake, don't look back!" Sarah cried, her voice trembling as she gripped the dashboard, knuckles white. Panic danced in her eyes, mirroring Mia's wild gaze. "I can't help it!" he shouted, adrenaline flooding his veins. "I have to see if they're gaining on us." But the rearview mirror only reflected the vortex of night, the shapes swirling and crashing together, laughter that warped into screams. The world was becoming an endless maze, a trap disguised as a road. The forest thickened, and the trees flickered like shadows. Each trunk appeared for a moment, almost alive, reaching for them with gnarled fingers. The laughter crescendoed, twisted into howls that seeped into their minds, echoing doubts and fears. "They can't have us, we want to let them," Jake insisted, though uncertainty gnawed at him harder than the grip of the shadows. "Look, the road!" Mia pointed at a fork ahead, where the asphalt seemed to ripple, guiding them toward an ominous darkness that lurked beyond. "Which way?" "Neither," Sarah shouted. "Just keep going straight." But straight was where the darkness yawned like a predator, wide and hungry. Jake hesitated, heart racing. What if one path leads to safety? He could barely hear himself over the cacophony of whispers darting in and out of his consciousness. Mia grabbed his arm, her eyes glistening with fear. "We need to decide, Jake. Now." Without thinking, he turned the wheel hard to the left, toward where the laughter grew louder, and the air thickened with exultation. The engine sputtered, the headlights danced erratically, flickering on and off as if the vehicle itself were caught in the thrall of fear. A strange fog started to billow across the path, enveloping the SUV in a cloying haze. The laughter transformed into a steady cadence, a rhythm that pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing them deeper still. "We should turn back," Mia cried. "This is insane." But the choice was made. Darkness swallowed the last reprieve of light, and just as abruptly, the laughter faded into a chilling silence. The grip of dread wrapped tighter around them. Did we lose them?" Sarah's voice trembled, a wavering hope rising in the pit of her stomach, only to be crushed by the throb of fear that resonated in the silence. Suddenly, the air crackled, and the view ahead burst into flashes of light. Another figure, distorted amid the fog. It was the ghostly woman, her hand outstretched, fingers curling desperately. "Help me!" she mouthed, lips moving with urgency, but her eyes glinted with surface fear, a reflection of what lay beneath. Jake's breath caught. Was this a warning or a plea? "What do we do?" he gasped, fighting the urge to stop. They couldn't afford to hesitate. "Go!" Sarah shouted, the instinct for survival piercing the fog of indecision. "Don't let her distract us." And just as they seemed to pull away from the shadowy figures, the ground surged again. A voice boomed from the depths of the fog, low and sinister. "Stay with us just a little longer." Jake slammed the accelerator, the engine roaring back to life as he fought against despair. The road twisted again, each corner a new surge of panic, each turn a deeper plunge into the unknown. Ghostly cries layered the air like the weight of a funeral shroud, urging them toward an uncertain fate. They rounded a bend only to find their hopes dashed. A sheer drop loomed ahead, dark and unfathomable. The SUV skidded to a halt, tires screeching against the gravel as gravity pulled them toward the abyss. "We can't go over that!" Mia screamed, terror boiling over. But the shadows surged around them, encroaching with relentless hunger. "Get out!" Jake roared, determination flickering like the dying lights around them. He swung open the door, a gaping maw of night inviting him to step forward into the unknown. Like a slowly tightening noose, something deep inside the forest whispered a promise of doom, but they were left with no choice. Heart racing, they had to chance it, or would they become the next souls forever trapped among the laughing shadows? The air around them thickened, and the darkness whispered secrets they could not yet comprehend. What awaited them on the other side might be worse than they ever imagined. Jake jumped out of the SUV, his feet hitting the ground with a dull thud that felt like a heartbeat in his chest. The weight of dread closed in around him as he glanced back at Sarah and Mia, who hesitated in the passenger seats, fear etched across their faces. The shadows loomed, crawling ever closer, a mass of darkness hungry for the light of their lives. "Come on!" he shouted, his voice breaking through the suffocating air. "We have to move!" The mist swirled like a malevolent creature, wrapping around their legs, threatening to pull them back into the vehicle, into the abyss where the shadows reigned. Sarah finally emerged, her eyes wide, brimming with unshed tears. Mia followed, trembling and pale, but there was no time for reassurance. The darkness hissed and laughed, a chorus of despair echoing through the chilling night. They stumbled toward the edge of the drop, where the ground ended sharply, a void of black that twisted and whispered, beckoning them forward. Jake peered into the abyss, searching for anything that might offer hope. Instead, he was met with an unsettling stillness, a dreadful promise that silence carried. Behind them, the SUV shuddered as more shadows flooded from the trees. It was as if the very forest had come to life, betrayed by the beacon of the headlights that had once provided safety. "This way!" Jake shouted, gesturing to the dense brush nearby, though part of him screamed to run back to the car, to the safety of glass and metal. As they darted deeper into the underbrush, each step felt heavier, as if the ground itself resisted them. The shadows hissed, morphing into shapes that twisted and writhed, their jagged edges contrasting sharply against the flickering, ghostly light of the moon. "No!" Mia whimpered, grasping at Jake's arm. The weight of fear dragged at her voice, crystallizing the essence of despair that anchored in her throat. Jake turned to her, the look of desperation tearing at him. "We can't stop," he pleaded, pulling her along. "Just keep moving." They pushed deeper into the thick vegetation. Branches clawed at their arms and faces, and the air was choked with dampness, heavy and cloying. The laughter from behind shook the trees, reverberating like an evil chant, an echo that gnawed at their sanity. Suddenly, they broke through the underbrush and found themselves standing before an ancient-looking cabin, its structure warped and twisted with time. Windows shattered, the roof sagging in on itself like a dying creature, but it stood defiantly against the encroaching shadows. Jake, we can't!" Sarah gasped, pulling back. "It's a trap!" But before he could speak, the ground trembled again, and the shadows surged closer. The desperate voices, once whispers, now became a cacophony of anger and madness. "Join us!" they screamed, blending into a haunting chant. "Stay! Forever!" With shaking hands, Jake pushed open the creaking door. The cabin was dark, its insides whispering secrets of despair and torment. This could be a way out, he muttered, but the uncertainty dripped like poison into his thoughts. Footsteps echoed behind them, swift and malevolent. "Let us go!" he roared, but his words fell flat against the chorus of dark promises that surged forward, drawing them into a grip of unease. Inside, stale air pressed against their skin as they crossed the threshold. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing away the howl of the night. Inside, dust motes danced like trap souls in the faint light peeking through broken windows. The shadows outside hissed in frustration, coiling and slinking back as if unable to penetrate the threshold. Jake's heart thundered in his chest. The walls felt alive, something restless stirred just beyond reach. Was this a refuge or a trap? And what unseen horrors lurked beneath the surface within? Just then, a low growl emanated from the corner of the room, dark and inviting. Jake's breath caught as a pair of glimmering eyes opened in the gloom, fixing on them. A monstrous silhouette shifted, and a voice resonated from the darkness. "You thought you could escape?" Jake's blood ran cold as dread closed in around him, tightening like a noose. They were not safe. The shadows outside were nothing compared to what awaited them within. What had they awakened? The growl echoed again, resonating through Jake's bones, chilling him to the core. He tried to swallow, but his throat felt dry, like sandpaper. The eyes gleamed cruelly, reflecting both hunger and amusement. He felt the air grow thick with malevolence, an almost tangible force pressing down on them. "Jake, we need to get out of here." Sarah's voice trembled, her fingers clutching Mia's arm tighter. But the door, they realized, had locked them in. An unseen hand had claimed the cabin, sealing their fate. Jake's pulse quickened, pounding in rhythm with the oppressive darkness that wrapped around them. "Don't panic," he urged, forcing calm into his voice. "We'll find another way out." A low rumbling laugh erupted from the shadows. You think you can leave? The voice taunted, dripping with malice. You've entered a pact, and gratitude is owed. What do you offer? The words sent a shiver rippling through Jake. This was no ordinary haunt. This place had a hunger that reached beyond physical bodies. Living souls weren't just trapped, they were consumed. What do you want from us? Mia's voice cracked as she edged back toward the door, the walls seeming to pulse like a living thing around her. The laughter intensified, shattering the stillness of the cabin like glass breaking. Oh, sweet child, you have already given a part of yourselves just by being here. It hungers for your fear, your despair. A stuttered breath escaped Sarah's lips. No, we want to give you anything. Suddenly, the shadows surrounding them elongated, forming grotesque shapes that snaked through the dust-filled air. Jake's heart raced. He could see the shapes morphing into faces, twisted, angry faces that screamed silently with voices long forgotten. They belonged to others who had come before. We're not like them, he shouted, trying to rally his friends. We can fight this. But doubt crept in. What if these shadows were more powerful than they understood? The monstrous silhouette stepped closer, revealing more of its ghastly form, muscles twisting, limbs elongated, a visage not quite human. Fight? It echoed mockingly. What can you fight with? Hope? Resolve? You think you are special? Just more souls to devour, just like those that came before you. Jake staggered back, his resolve faltering. He needed to stay centered for Sarah and Mia, but the oppressive force bore down on him, trying to lure him into despair. We have to stick together. Remember our plan. As they huddled close, the shadows flickered, swirling around them in wicked delight. Moments blurred as they considered their options. There were dark corners of the house that seemed to beckon them, the cellar, an attic, spaces that dripped with whispers. What if we separated? Distracted while one of us finds an exit? Mia suggested, her voice wavering between determination and terror. No! Jake shouted, gripping her shoulders tightly. Don't even think about it. We move as one. Always. The air thickened with anticipation, almost alive with the faint echoes of regrets from those trapped here before. A moment of silence enveloped them, a heavy pause before chaos erupted. Then, in that suffocating stillness, the creature suddenly lunged forward, and Jake saw it clearly for the first time, claws like jagged steel glistening in the scant light, its mouth opening wide to reveal teeth that weren't teeth but glistening shards of despair. Your souls will sustain me. It roared, and with a flash that stole the breath from their lungs, plunging them into utter blackness. Run! Jake screamed, the word a lifeline against the encroaching void. But in a heart-stopping thud, darkness swallowed them. Would they find a way to survive this time, or would they join those already lost, forever echoing in the haunted groans of the cabin? Jake felt weightless, as if he were floating in a vast, empty void. But it was a false sense of security. The darkness pulsed, swirling with unseen malice. He reached out, fingers scraping against something cold and wet. Walls? Flesh? Panic surged in him. Sarah! Mia! The names echoed, swallowed by the abyss, and fear coiled around his heart like a vice. Then he heard it. A whisper, slithering through the dark, coiling around his mind. You can't escape, not now, not ever. It wasn't just a voice. It was a chorus of despair, a strangled lament from those who had come before. Jake twisted around, looking for his friends. We have to find each other. Fear was a living thing inside him, clawing for release. But the dark only laughed, a cacophony of sound that drowned out his thoughts. Suddenly, a faint shimmer flickered in the distance, a glimmer of hope or a trap. He squinted into the dark, trying to gauge what lay ahead. This way! He shouted, feeling the pull of the light, the instinctive urge to move. As he stumbled toward it, he felt something graze his ankle, cold and slick like a serpent's skin, sending ripples of revulsion up his spine. He yanked his leg back, heart racing, but a low growl sounded, edged with irritation. The shadows thickened, swirling around, threatening to consume him whole. Stay close. Just stay close. He choked out, knowing he had to keep their spirits high even as his own faltered. The light drew closer now, wisps of silver, dancing with an eerie glow. Was it promising? Or deceptive? Uncertain, Jake hesitated, fighting against the grasp of fear that urged him to take flight. Then, from the dark edges of panic, familiar voices flickered. "Jake!" Sarah called, her voice trembling but present. "Over here!" He rushed toward the sound, relief filling his chest like a puff of air that quickly escaped with a whoosh when he found her grasping Mia's arm. They were white as sheets, terror etched across their features, as thick shadows balled around them, swirling with wicked impatience. "What now?" Mia breathed, eyes wide with horror. "The light," Jake said, desperation sharpening his voice. "We need to get to that light." But the laughter erupted again, mocking and cruel. "You think it will save you? Just a more elaborate trap." Before they could react, the darkness shifted, morphing into a mass of translucent figures, faces full of agony, mouths open in silent screams. It was an army of the lost, the cabin's past victims, rising like a tide of despondence. Jake's heart thundered in his chest. "They're just shadows. They can't hurt us." But doubt seeped in again. "Can we fight?" Sarah questioned, fear dripping from her lips like poison. The shadows writhed, closing in tighter. The air became heavy, an oppressive weight that made it hard to breathe. Panic clawed at Jake. He couldn't afford to let it overtake him now. He thought of the plan. They had come here together. "If we stick together, we can break whatever hold this thing has. We can fight." His voice broke the tense silence, hanging heavy in the air. "And how do we do that?" Mia whispered, trembling as the shadows pressed closer, hungry and restless. Jake felt the dark shift again, an unseen force yanking at them, pulling them apart. Control was slipping faster than he could grasp it. With adrenaline coursing through him, Jake gripped their arms tighter. "We move together! To the light! On 3! He counted, heart racing in anticipation, the shadows hissing and howling. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, racing towards the shimmering glow that promised freedom. But just as they broke through the drape of darkness, a shriek split the air, a piercing wail that carried despair, reverberating through the bones of the cabin. The light flickered, sputtering as if in a vulnerable flicker between life and death. Chaos erupted again. Shadows lunged, and the cabin twisted, the walls shifting like liquid night. "Hold on!" Jake screamed, knowing every heartbeat counted now, wondering if they had truly made the right choice. And then, they took a deep, synchronized breath and plunged into the light. But what awaited them on the other side could be worse than the shadows they were fleeing from. Jake stumbled out of the light, lungs gasping for air that felt thick and mildewed. The world around him had morphed into a setting strangely familiar yet twisted beyond reason. He blinked hard, trying to orient himself, and realized they were no longer in the cabin. The ground beneath them was slick with mud, dark and threatening, reflecting a sky choked with dark, roiling clouds. "Where are we?" Mia's voice shook, fear tinging every word. Her wide eyes darted around, searching the shadows that crept and shimmied at the edges of their vision. Jake looked back at the fading light, the door to the cabin now just a luminous bead in the distance, like a lighthouse lost in fog. I don't know," he managed, his heart pounding in his chest. The air felt electric, brimming with unquiet whispers that slithered into his ears, too soft to understand but sharp enough to know they didn't bode well. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a low growl, heavy in the damp air. From the shadows emerged a shape, a hulking silhouette that seemed to pulsate with dark energy. It moved forward, each step slow but assured, dragging along a tendril of midnight that flickered out like smoke around it. "Run!" Jake shouted, instinct overriding any hope of comprehension. They didn't need a second prompt. Spurred by primal fear, all three took off, their feet pounding against the sludge, desperate to escape the terror looming behind them. "Which way?" Sarah yelled, her voice rising above the thunder that cracked through the sky. Rain began to fall, fat drops hitting the ground like stones, each one soaking into the earth, growing sludge deeper. "Left. This way." Jake shouted, veering toward a narrow break between the trees. The growls morphed into a feral howl, shrill and insane, echoing through the damp surroundings. The demon behind them seemed to feed off their fear, chasing them with glee. Winding through the underbrush, they moved in almost frantic unison. Each twist of the path felt like a heart attack. The earth underfoot morphed into slick rubber, causing them to slip and collide. They fought the momentum of the shadows behind, the urge to flee interwoven with the vivid feeling of being hunted. Jake's breath came in short bursts, heart hammering against his ribs. We need to find higher ground. We can't let it corner us. He pushed forward, dragging his friends as they stumbled into a small clearing filled with twisted trees, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky like skeletal arms. The sounds of the chase faded momentarily, swallowed by the eerie stillness of the clearing. For a brief second, hope flickered. But then a cacophony of rustling filled the air, branches creaked, and the shadows coiled tighter, more of them pouring in, a grotesque unity of evil. Jake, what do we do? Mia's voice trembled, eyes darting to every dark corner. It felt as if the shadows themselves were listening, ready to pounce at the slightest sign of weakness. There! Jake pointed to an old, dilapidated cabin half hidden among the trees. Its rotting timbers groaned as if welcoming them or trapping them within its decaying home. We can hide. Hurry! They rushed toward the cabin, flinging open the door, which creaked ominously on its hinges. Once inside, they pressed against the wall, breathless, hearts pounding in their ears. The shadows paused at the threshold, swirling impatiently like a gathering storm. Jake leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself. The air was thick with old dust and a pungent mustiness that filled his lungs. He couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't safe, not yet. Do you hear them? Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath. The whispers? Jake listened. The buzz was faint at first but grew undeniable. Whispers layered upon one another, regret and despair narrating secrets best left untold. They all exchanged terrified glances. There's something here, Mia said, backing away from a shadow pulling at the edges of the room. We need to leave. Now. But as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Let us out. Jake pounded the wood, but the cabin answered with an eerie, mocking silence. The whispers crescendoed, merging into a single voice that rang out with pure malice. You have entered the realm of the lost. There's no escape. Panic surged again. Fear clenched tighter. Jake's mind raced, sparking with desperate idea after desperate idea. We need to fight it, he shouted, rallying them to face the encroaching darkness. But how could they fight something that seemed to own this place, and now their lives? With resolve brewing in his chest, he shouted over the frenzy, Together we break its hold. All three surged forward, ready to face whatever horror awaited them, fueled by courage and sheer terror. Yet, deep within, another question emerged. Had they merely traded one set of horrors for another? And just as they did, the shadows lunged forward, desperate to claim their next victims. What awaited them in this new darkness? Would they even survive to find out? The cabin walls felt like they were closing in as the shadows writhed, thick and alive, hungry to consume all light. A chill swept through the room, freezing the air around them. Jake's heart raced, a relentless drum thumping in his chest against the rising dread. Jake, what is happening? Mia's voice was barely more than a whisper. Her eyes darted to every corner. I can't do this. He could see her resolve waning, panic flooding her features. We'll figure it out, he insisted, trying to sound steady. The shadows seemed to pulse in reply, coaxing laughter echoing in the suffocating darkness. Together, Sarah shouted, her voice hoarse. We have to stand together. But the confidence in her voice was unraveling. She clutched Jake's arm, fingers digging in as she stared wide-eyed at the shadows constricting around, twisting toward them like serpents. The whispers now converged like a storm, swirling around them, each word laced with agony. You shouldn't have come, you will be forgotten, lost like the others. Each phrase struck hard, hitting of despair and hopelessness, chipping away at their will. Just breathe, Jake said, forcing his own breath to remain steady. Don't listen to them. He turned to the wall, desperately feeling for any means of escape. His fingers grazed over rotting wood until they collided with something cold and metallic. A window! He yelled. Over here! They pushed toward it, but it felt like wading through molasses. The shadows hissed in protest, wrapping around them, trying to pull them back from the light. Mia screamed as something brushed against her cheek, icy and seeping. Terror seized her, and she stumbled into Jake. Keep moving! He barked, but doubt coiled tightly in his gut. The cabin seemed to exhale a rancid breath as they moved. Old memories echoed through the space, a dark reminder of what had happened within those walls, incestuous with despair. Jake shoved the window open, the glass splintering as it broke. The sound echoed like a gunshot, a jarring signal in the muted air. He swung his body toward the opening, ready to leap into the dark, alive with the promise of escape. But a sinister laugh rumbled from the shadows, growing louder, reverberating in the wooden frame of the cabin. You think you can leave? No one escapes. You are part of this now. Jake's hand shot forward, gripping Mia's arm as she hesitated at the window. We're going. Now. Suddenly, a weight slammed against the door, splintering it as the shadows surged forward, morphing into haphazard forms of twisted faces and elongated claws, reaching for them. Jake leapt, pulling Mia through the jagged opening. Run! He shouted as he landed hard in the mud. They didn't hesitate but took off into the darkness, Sarah trailing close behind. The woods thundered alive as the shadows screamed in frustration, angry howls echoing through the trees as they chased after the three. Thick rain poured down, washing away the remnants of the cabin but not the fear clawing at their souls. Where are we going? Mia gasped, struggling to keep pace. What if it catches us? We find help. We just need to get to the road, Jake urged, adrenaline flooding through him. He could feel the shadows clawing behind them, desperate to snatch them back into the depths of despair. Branches lashed at their skin, mud sucked at their feet, but they pressed on despite exhaustion bubbling beneath the surface. Suddenly, a glimmer broke through the trees ahead, a light pulsing like a heartbeat erring towards salvation. Look! Sarah pointed, hope igniting in her voice. Over there! But Jake's heart lurched at the sight. What he thought was safety morphed, cold and unwelcoming, as the shadows twisted together, forming faces, eyes glinting with malice, lips curling into cruel grins. Wait, he whispered, a chill creeping down his spine. What if it's a trap? Before he could stop them, Mia and Sarah charged toward it, drawn by that flickering light, leaving Jake torn between fear and the shocking sight before him. As they closed in, shadows flickered, revealing a road soaked in moonlight. But something sinister lurked just beneath, and the whispers grew louder, intertwining with the night air. The road of regrets and lost souls. He stood there, heart pounding, stomach churning. What have we stumbled into? Was the light truly a sanctuary or the darkest of deceptions? In that moment, as if answering his thoughts, something slithered from the trees, lunging toward him. It twisted in an awful dance, hungry and ready to snatch him into the void. Jake! Mia screamed from ahead, reaching for him. But the shadows wrapped tighter around his legs, pulling him down. Would he become just another lost soul? A breathless thought lingered in his mind as he strained to break free. How far would they go to escape, and at what cost? The looming darkness held its breath as he fought against the pull, the horrifying whispers promising a fate sealed with screams of the forsaken. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as the shadows writhed around him, tangling his legs, pulling him down into the suffocating darkness. Panic flooded his system, boiling over into a roar. The faces of his daughter and wife blurred before him, worry and fear etching deep lines into their brows. No! He shouted, scrambling against the clutches of despair. I wouldn't let you take me. The shadows hissed, whispering tales of anguish and regret, but the desperate strength of a father's love surged through him like a fire. I'm coming! He bellowed back. He threw himself forward, pushing against the grip of darkness. The whispers escalated into a cacophony of rage and laughter. For a moment, time froze. Then, with one final surge that felt like tearing through a veil of smoke, Jake broke free. He stumbled forward, crashing against moonlit ground. "Jake, come on!" Sarah's voice sliced through the noise, snapping him back to reality. She and Mia were waiting by the road, eyes wide with fear. The shadows hissed angrily, boiling and roiling, but they didn't pursue him. They had lost interest, focused now on the family as they dared to escape. "Run!" Jake yelled, catching his breath as the three of them launched toward the faint glow shimmering at the end of the road. Each stride felt heavy, as if the air were thick with regret, but they pressed on, fueled by a shared will to escape. The road stretched out like an artery through the woods, pulsing with light and warmth. Yet there was an undeniable sense of foreboding. What awaited them at the end? Hope or another doom? They kept running, eyes locked on the flickering lantern light. Just as Mia stumbled on the uneven ground, Jake reached out, snatching her wrist. "I've got you, keep going," he urged, every beat of his heart urging them forward. Whispers danced at the edges of his hearing, promising despair, but he focused on the light. They were almost there. The lantern flickered, casting wild shadows that flitted amongst the trees, twirling and dancing with a life of their own. The air grew denser, and the familiar growls of the shadows came rushing back. The creature was close behind, hungry for what it had nearly claimed. They broke through the last line of trees, bursting into a small clearing filled with wildflowers, glimmering silver under the moonlight. But as they stepped into the open, the laughter emerged, swelling intense and maddening. "Get to the light!" Jake shouted, urgency clawing at his voice. They raced toward the lantern, that beacon of hope, heartbeats sinking in desperate rhythm. The light seemed to pulse, alive and fierce, expanding as they drew near. Just as they reached its warmth, a shattering roar erupted from the shadows, sending a wave of cold air crashing over them. The entity surged forth, full of rage, eyes burning lively in the night. It wasn't he letting go easily. "Light!" Sarah cried, her voice trembling as she grabbed Mia's hand tight. "We need to focus on the light." Jake nodded, heart racing faster than he could fathom. "Together, hold on." They stood close, aligning themselves as the shadows encroached, a breath away from darkness. "Keep moving toward it." With terrifying speed, the entity lunged at them, poised to devour everything. But the light reacted, flaring brightly, a protective shield shrouding them in warmth. "It's scared of the light," Mia cried. Jake's fear twisted with hope, and he fought to uphold that connection to the light. In that heartbeat of revelation, the shadows dimmed in response to their courage. It was alive with energy, pulsating like a drumbeat, embracing their fear, turning it into resolve. "Let us fight them together," Jake roared, feeling the charge of his family's strength converge. "For every soul it has taken, we resist. We will not be lost." With that, they pressed forward into the light, hands interlocked, hearts pounding. The glow surged as they approached, and just as the entity's claws reached for them, the light erupted outward, enveloping them in a brilliant blaze. Shadows screeched like wounded animals, retreating into the dark. Theirs was a dance of fury and desperation. "Hang on!" Jake shouted, and they dove into the brilliant light, their laughter and cries blending into a powerful anthem, a pledge woven by the strength of family and love. With a blinding flash, they were transported, collapsing on the soft grass of a park barren of shadows, yet vibrant under the sunlight. The weight of the gloomy woods lifted, their minds clearing from the horror they had escaped. "Are we free?" Sarah whispered, glancing around. The air was light and bright, filled with the sounds of laughter, children playing, and birds singing. The nightmare felt like a distant dream. "We made it," Mia exhaled, breathless with relief. They clutched each other tightly, brushing off stray remnants of fear, while Jake's heart fluttered with the overwhelming warmth of gratitude. As a new day dawned, they felt it. The power to choose life over darkness would always be theirs. And with a shared smile, they turned toward the path leading home, knowing they had fought beyond the limits of despair. As they walked away from the clearing, a simple truth settled in their hearts. No matter the shadows lurking in the depths, they had each other, and together, There was nothing they could not overcome, and as the sun rose over the horizon, it illuminated their way forward, a promise that the darkest nights can end, that hope prevails. Don't let fear hold you back. You need to subscribe now for more tales that keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support our community. Flood the comments section with your reactions. We want to hear your theories about what could happen next. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Be part of our story, join our journey,